Hey guys, Season 4 of The Boys is here, and honestly, these episodes have been nothing short of awesome. Anthony Starr is eating up every scene as Homelander per his usual, and the violence is masterful as always.
What? She confessed, leak plugged.
But one of the most interesting aspects about Season 4 of The Boys is how it handles side characters. For those of you who are new, I have spent the last near decade, it seems, as a novel and script editor who's worked with everything from plays to mangas to TV shows to fantasy novels. I will put my link to my website down below if you're interested. But aside from working with clients, my other favorite thing to do is just geek out about high quality writing here on YouTube. Part of it's because it's just cool to be in a space with other fans, but also because there is so much we can all learn from how our favorite fictions handle writing. And that's why I have an interest in Season 4's side characters, specifically to Sister Sage and Colin. Sage keeps with the show's track record of introducing fantastic superhero side characters, but Colin is just kind of there. And that's the interesting part. The same show has introduced two side characters in the same season who have vastly different qualities to their writing. And you know how I know this? Because there's not a single clip I could find of Colin to use in this video. No one cares about him. No one is watching his scenes on YouTube.
Someone knows where he is.
Nobody's gonna tell you nothing.
No one cares about the Frenchie plotline. It's kind of crazy. But anyway, my goal today is to break down the craft of writing side characters, specifically looking at why Sister Sage works so well and why, in my professional opinion, and probably a bunch of other people's opinions, Colin doesn't. And if you ever want to hear me talk about The Boys or anything else in person, I stream here on YouTube every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. PST and every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. PST. So, the first thing we will have to go over to compare and contrast Sage and Colin is their introductions.
Everyone remain calm. You're all very special people. Stop it. Stop.
How a side character is introduced can play an important role in how a viewer receives them. Some side characters are foreshadowed or gradually introduced into a narrative. Becca falls into this category, as does Soldier Boy. They were mentioned in earlier seasons, building up a sense of their character and then officially introduced later on.
You and me, we're in this together. We're Robin and Becca.
On the flip side, there are side characters who are more or less suddenly dropped into the narrative, like Ryan or Stormfront. Sister Sage and Colin are part of this sudden introduction category. Now, just to be clear, one type of introduction isn't better or worse than the other. They are both narrative tools with strengths and weaknesses. Gradual introductions can slowly build up viewer expectations for a character to be one way, only to subvert that expectation when the character is officially introduced. Side characters that are suddenly introduced usually work to more immediately impact the narrative rather than being a slow burn. As said before, Sage and Colin are suddenly introduced, and they both prototypically have an immediate impact on the narrative. Sage becomes Homelander's right-hand woman, and Colin causes Frenchie to spiral. However, there is a distinct difference in the quality of their introductions. Sage's introduction is dramatic. Colin's introduction is melodramatic. Let's break it down. Drama from a narrative perspective is the creation of tension and mystery, which in turn creates investment by the viewer who wishes to see the outcome and resolution. As a side character, Sage's introduction executes this drama wonderfully. There is mounds of tension and mystery about who she is, what she actually wants, how smart she actually is, and how in over her head she might be.
You're so smart. Show me. Show me.
She always seems to be one step ahead of everyone, but we've seen the fates of other characters like that. Sage is immediately dramatic because she creates situations that puts our characters into higher tension and conflict.
Fuck you, fascist!
Conversely, Colin is melodramatic. Where drama seeks to invest you through the creation of tension and mystery, melodrama seeks to invest you through exaggerated emotions and circumstances. The show seeks to invest us in Colin by creating an over-the-top storyline to pull on our heartstrings, that being that he is a drug addict whose whole family was murdered by Frenchie. The issue with melodrama is that in most cases, the viewer just doesn't really care about the character experiencing this exaggerated tragedy or hardship. The show wants you to care, and the show acts like you care, but because we are not invested in the character because of their qualities, we don't really care about their hardships. Fun fact, and this is completely off script, Season 1 of Attack on Titan also dealt with this melodrama. The characters were going through incredibly horrible circumstances, and they were weeping and crying, and a lot of people talked about how in Attack on Titan Season 1, they just weren't really connected to all that emotion, that exaggerated tragedy, because they didn't know the characters yet. This got shored up and made a lot better in the later seasons, but it's a problem in writing the melodrama that pervades multiple different fictions. But anyway, to put it most simply, Sage succeeds because the narrative isn't asking me to be emotional about her. It only requests that I become interested in the mystery she presents. Where Colin fails is that I'm supposed to feel very emotional about his and Frenchie's situation, except I don't know or care about it at all, like it's never been talked about before. If Colin had been gradually introduced over seasons with foreshadowing or small appearances, building up our care for him or the pain his family endured, his narrative would transform from melodrama to just drama. But that's only the beginning. Now we can jump into the deeper issues.
Humans are nothing. They're less than nothing. They're just toys for my amusement, and yet they control everything.
Let's look at how each of these side characters interact with the conflict and how it affects our investment and interest in them. Pretty much every character in a narrative has a role. These roles are extremely varied, but most well-executed characters revolve around some aspect of the conflict. The conflict is whatever is standing in the way of the main characters achieving their goal. So, what do we consider as the roles for Sister Sage and Colin, insofar as their interaction with the conflict? Sister Sage functions to empower Homelander, which in turn impacts the overarching conflict of the narrative, which is stop Homelander. By helping Homelander and Vought, she is acting as another obstacle that stands in the way of our main characters achieving their goal. Colin is a bit different. Instead of interacting with an overarching conflict or external conflict, Colin is brought in specifically to create an internal conflict for Frenchie. One of the things that I didn't mention before was that conflict gives purpose to characters. If a character is not struggling against something, they cannot move forward. And if they can't move forward, they can't undergo character development. And a character like that would be stagnant and possibly uninteresting. So to avoid that, high-profile fictions always have the characters involved in some type of conflict. Again, for The Boys as a show, our core cast all share the overarching conflict of defeating Homelander and Vought. However, high-profile fictions also usually go one step further. Along with overarching external conflicts, they will also have the characters go through personalized internal conflicts, and this is no different in The Boys. Season 4 is actually a great example of this. Huey's personal conflict is the one with his mom and his comatose dad. Starlight's personal conflict is with Firecracker and the Starlighters. Both Butcher and Homelander's personal conflicts revolve around Ryan.
You have a home? You have a father? I've given you everything that I ever wanted, and it's still not good enough for you. Why?
The reason I explain all this is because Colin, as a side character, exists to give Frenchie a personal conflict. A weakness of large ensemble casts is that it has to juggle many characters, and some of them become really difficult to utilize at points. Not all characters can be equally as important at once, meaning some aren't going to interact with the overarching conflict in as meaningful a way. Frenchie is one example of this. He doesn't really have much value in the way of fighting Vought or taking down Homelander, so instead of having him do nothing, the show puts him in a conflict centered around Colin. You can almost think of the Colin storyline as the same narrative thing as Sokka having his own episodes with sword training or his dad. He had less immediate significant importance, but he didn't just do nothing, and it worked really well. Frenchie, on the other hand, doesn't work so well in the season. Frenchie likes Colin deeply, but is in conflict for how he murdered his family. And again, I wish I had clips to show you, but no one cares about Colin, so there's no clips available. Frenchie's guilt and personal identity will be what he needs to overcome across the season. It's his conflict. The difference between Sister Sage's well-executed storyline and Colin's lackluster storyline is that Sister Sage interacts directly with the overarching conflict. Homelander is the antagonist, so everything she does with him has consequence, and therefore creates tension for the viewer. However, Colin only interacts with Frenchie's conflict, and Frenchie at the moment isn't interacting with the overarching conflict at all. He's just kind of doing his own thing. And because this conflict with Colin is self-contained, when compared against the grand scheme of the narrative, it makes Colin seem inconsequential. Where Sage's conflict touches everything, Colin's conflict only affects one character. Funny enough, this is actually a perfect spot to transition into our next topic.
I'm your father. We are a family.
One of the other purposes of side characters is actually to change main characters. Think of side characters a bit like a narrative kaleidoscope. Their function is to allow the characters and conflicts to be viewed in a different light. Side characters can act as a steroid for character development, and part of why I like them so much is their ability to make main characters present in ways that we've never seen them before. Think of how much Jane changed Jesse in Breaking Bad, or how much Shay changed Tyrion in Game of Thrones. A side character's ability to affect the narrative in ways we haven't seen before is an excellent marker for how well they are written. Sister Sage is another great example of this. Through her inclusion in the narrative, we got to see Homelander in a completely new way, and I mean that both thematically and literally.
God, I've spent my life scaling the peak of Vought. It's all I ever wanted, and then now that I have it...
You're still not happy.
We got to see Homelander vulnerable, worried, collaborative, and conniving.
Stay here, reeking of Taco Bell and loneliness. Or we can put some of your theories into practice on the global scale. It's the last time you got a chance like that.
He recognizes his own issues with Vought and seeks outside help because he knows he needs a change.
I'm surrounded by sycophants and fucking imbeciles.
It's just that you make a lot of really great points, sir.
Deep.
This alone endears us to Sage as viewers because through her, we are receiving these narrative rewards, these things we haven't seen before.
I need advice from someone on my level. Of course, you breathe a word of this, I'll pull you apart bit by bit.
Unfortunately, the exact opposite happens with Colin. As we establish, Colin's entire function as a side character is to put Frenchie into conflict. That would be fine if this conflict changed Frenchie or presented him in a way that we hadn't seen before. The problem is, which is insane to me, Frenchie is conflicted in the exact same way we've seen before. He's conflicted about his past and worried if he's worthy of redemption. This new character is being used to retread on ground that's already been seen before, and because of it, there is not much reason to become invested in this new Colin character. Now, obviously, Colin isn't meant to be as important as Sister Sage. I'm not saying that he is. I'm not saying that he should have the same level of impact on the story, but I do wish the writing of his character was more in line with the high-quality storytelling that Sage benefits from. And that brings us to our last topic. Before I jump into that though, I wanted to quickly say that if you liked the video, make sure to subscribe and check out my second channel too. It's a lot more informal and I dive into more personal stuff concerning writing and more. Also, if you want editing services, proofreading, copy edits, or ghostwriting, check out my website for my rates, link below too. Alright, but to close this out, let's talk about character interest.
Oh my God. I have got to carry this entire fucking company on my shoulders.
Side characters are, at the end of the day, characters. And characters with any amount of recurring appearance in a story need to be interesting. The fundamental issue that separates Sister Sage from Colin is that Sister Sage is interesting and Colin is not. Being interesting doesn't mean the character needs to have incredible skills. Narrative interest comes from understandability, relatability, and tension. Sister Sage is introduced right from the get-go as the smartest woman in the world.
You know, I would have thought the smartest woman on Earth would have a nicer place.
Smartest person. And that person's too smart to give a
about Pottery Barn.
Okay, preach, sister.
Sorry, person. But that's not even really why she's interesting. She's just a mystery. She's enigmatic. She is ahead of everyone. She has the eye of Homelander. She's making fools of our main characters, and we as the audience don't even really know what she wants. But Colin is just kind of there. For the most part, the only thing we know about him is that he was in Narcotics Anonymous and that he knows Frenchie. I'm sure that the show writers are hoping that the interest would be created by the mystery of why did Frenchie murder his family, and on some level, sure, I am interested in that part of the story, but that doesn't mean I'm interested in Colin as a character. He has demonstrated no qualities on screen aside from being a non-stop flirt. And it's this emptiness as an actual character that exacerbates all of Colin's other writing problems. I could honestly look past him not being foreshadowed, not affecting the plot much, and not changing the characters if he were just engaging as a person. Some side characters are incredibly inconsequential, but they're just so dang interesting or funny or cool that I don't care. But Colin doesn't have such qualities, which makes him appear only as a tool to keep Frenchie in conflict rather than a real character of his own. It's honestly incredible how these two side characters can have such drastic differences in quality, but hey, that's just writing. Anyway, thanks for watching all the way until the end. Make sure to subscribe, check out my Patreon, and check out my website for editing services and my fantasy novels. Tune in to my streams on Sunday and Wednesday, and I hope to talk to you all again soon.